All right, so today I'm going to just walk through our code that we submitted for computer vision. Here you can see that this is where I set up the orb detection with the adjusted parameters, because I discovered that as we affected and changed these parameters here, the better the code got. Here is just a couple of functions, which is loading and processing images, the key points, which we'll talk about later, seeing if it's in a certain color range. So these I'll talk about later as we're getting through the code. But here's the reference images. This is why we have that function load and process images, because with the amount of things that are dependent on the word pedestrian, yield, stop, it was easier to set up mini dictionaries with those values and then send those images to those functions, so then we could have those deal with it and have it all separated. Here is essentially just creating the videos. So videos test1 mp4, so essentially saying where the videos are at, which folder, which file name, and then joining the path, and then making sure that we're capturing it with CV2, which with Python, that's how we're going to mostly deal with this data. Here is pretty much formatting and setting up our output video. So you can see this is the name for it here. And this is the frame width, height, FPS, all the basic information. Here is essentially setting up just basic constants that we're going to be using later in the code and checking if a BF matcher. So BF matcher is just a library that we're using just to deal with certain frames. So while the cap is open, so while they're still frames, we're going to read in a frame and essentially add a number to the current frame number, make that frame into a gray frame, so changing the color from fully all the rainbow to white, gray, and black. Here we have a for loop, essentially just going through those reference images that we have created, which is here, and essentially going through for each of those reference images, going through each one to go through all the frames. If the frame is not none, so that means there's a frame detected, and the reference descriptors, pretty much those are our points, are there, then we know that's a match. And we sort those matches based on the distance away from the camera. Here, this is adjusted match count threshold. This is where we get into how many points there are, and then for each of those points, what color they are. This is where we do our color verification. Here, this is just going through each one of those points and verifying that color. That color goes with that sign, and if it doesn't, then it's not valid. That was really useful because we were having stop signs get matched with yields with pedestrian signs because they have similar shapes sometimes and similar designs. And with that color matching, that pretty much took that off the table. Here is clustered valid points. So before we even get into making the frame around that value, we are essentially stating if there's a lot of points around that sign that are verifying, that took out any errors we had with cars, because it kept on getting mixed up with cars because of the sharp corners that it has. But with this, because of those few outliers that were pointing out with cars that were just 1 point and then would go back to correct, that got rid of it. Next, this is comparing with our previous frame. So for each frame, it would save that frame information. So the next frame down the line, the next index point, has the values for that frame. So I can go back and see, oh, was there points here before? This also got rid of even more values from cars and some that were just in the sky that were happening. And then this is pretty much creating the boundary box. This is just basic information. Essentially, Here I am show, that's processing images, and that's just basic syntax. But here is our output video. You can see here that this is one of our error videos where it didn't get that speed sign, but it does get the pedestrian sign. Because there's so much snow on the ground, it is getting confused and it cannot match with the speed limit sign, but it can do it with the pedestrian sign. And that is it.